The university office smelled like money. New carpet, filtered air, everything polished to a sheen meant to impress donors. I'd been in boardrooms like this before, back when my work meant something. Back when I still believed being present was enough to earn a place. We sat around a long mahogany table, the kind that makes people sit straighter even when they don't know why. Across from us sat the dean, a thin man in a tailored suit, fingers steepled as he glanced through Logan's application packet. There were folders with crests, pamphlets with bright futures printed on glossy stock, and I remember thinking how strange it was that none of them had my name on them, even though I had written the checks that made them possible. Emily sat to my left, hands folded neatly in her lap. Logan was across from me, slouched in his chair, legs stretched out like a prince waiting for tribute. His hoodie half-zipped, earbuds dangling around his neck, posture deliberately casual. He didn't want to be here, but more than that, he wanted me to know it. The dean turned the conversation finally to financials. Numbers, requirements, commitments. That was my cue. I opened my mouth to speak. I had prepared. I had a list. Bank statements, transfer confirmations, a full breakdown of the costs I'd already covered: housing, books, deposits. I wasn't there to boast. I was there because I thought that, at the very least, I was part of this process. That's when Logan leaned back, smiled without warmth, and said it. "He's just a sponsor." The words floated out like smoke, slow and deliberate. Not a joke, not a slip, a statement. I heard them. So did the dean. So did Emily. Something in me stiffened. Not rage, not shock. Something quieter, something colder. I didn't rise, not yet. I only turned to look at my wife, to see her reaction, to see if there was even a flicker of discomfort. There wasn't. I stood, half out of instinct, not to correct the boy, not to defend myself, but to mark the boundary. The room was too small for silence. I couldn't let that line settle without response. But before I could say a word, Emily moved. A hand. Just her hand. A small gesture, low and sharp. A warning. She didn't look at me when she did it. She didn't have to. It was the kind of signal people give to dogs who bark at the wrong time. Sit. And I did. I sat, as she turned to the dean, smiling like everything was perfectly normal. "Logan's old enough to speak for himself," she said. Her voice was calm, sweet even, the kind of voice people trust. Then came the real blow. My husband isn't involved in that side of things. That side being the one I had paid for. The one I had spent months navigating: scholarships, deadlines, meetings. The one I had sacrificed for. And just like that, in front of the man who held the keys to Logan's future, I was reduced to a bank account. Not a stepfather. Not a parent. Not even a partner. Just a sponsor. I stared at her, hoping foolishly that maybe this was some misstep, that maybe she would glance back and offer me something. A glance. A nod. A sign that I still existed. She didn't. Her eyes were fixed on the dean. Her body tilted subtly away from me, as if aligning with her son, shielding him from me. And Logan? He didn't even look at me. He was already onto his next point, speaking confidently about his internship plans, his leadership experience, his goals. All things I had helped build in silence over years of sacrifice. But now he spoke as if he had done it all alone, as if I had been nothing but a bystander. I sat through the rest of that meeting in silence, nodding when required, smiling when expected. My presence was tolerated, but my voice had been revoked. I had been edited out of the script, and the rest of the scene played on without me. The dean shook our hands at the end. He thanked us, Emily specifically, for supporting Logan's journey. I don't even think he looked me in the eye. Why would he? I wasn't introduced. I wasn't spoken for. I had no title in that room. We stepped into the hallway. Emily was already scrolling her phone. Logan had his earbuds back in. I walked behind them, not beside. My footsteps didn't echo the way theirs did. When we reached the parking lot, Emily finally spoke to me. Not about what had happened. Not about the insult. She asked if I had remembered to bring the receipt for the application fee refund. I had. Of course I had. I handed it to her without a word, and she thanked me without looking up. Logan got into the back seat. Emily slid into the front. I sat in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, engine off, and stared at the dashboard like it might offer some explanation, some meaning. But all it reflected was my own face. Something inside me cracked that afternoon. Not with sound, not with fire, but with that same clean, silent snap that happens when a wire has been stretched too far for too long. It had taken 15 seconds for my stepson to erase me in front of strangers. It had taken less than 5 for my wife to confirm it. I thought about all the years I'd spent catching Logan's missed appointments, paying his fines, covering the tuition bills when his father didn't show. I remembered the nights I stayed up helping him with essays, the weekends I gave up for college tours. None of it mattered now. None of it bought me a voice at the table. I was only there to pay, not to speak, not to be heard, just to fund a life I was not welcome in. The car ride home was quiet. Emily made small talk about lunch, about errands. Logan stared out the window, earbuds in, already gone from the moment. I didn't speak. I was listening to the silence between their words. That's where the truth always lives. It wasn't the first time I'd felt like an outsider, but it was the first time I saw them agree on it. Like they had rehearsed the lines. Like they had known this day would come. And maybe they had. That night I didn't bring it up. I didn't ask her why she said what she did. I didn't ask Logan what he meant. Because I already knew. I just hadn't admitted it to myself yet. Emily went to bed early. Logan stayed up playing games in the living room, laughing through his headset with people who didn't know his name wasn't earned on his own. I sat in my office, door closed, staring at my desk. There were copies of tuition forms there, receipts, statements, bank transfers, evidence of a man who believed his effort would be recognized. I looked at them and realized what they really were. Proof of a delusion. I wasn't a father. I wasn't even a partner. I was a transaction. And once the transaction was complete, I had no more use in their eyes. I could have shouted. I could have demanded an apology. But what would that have changed? You don't demand respect from people who've already decided you're beneath them. You just stop offering yourself up to be used. So I sat there, quiet, still, and something inside me shifted. I didn't know it then, but the decision had already begged *n. Came the next morning. I was drinking coffee at the kitchen table, alone. Emily and Logan had left early, something about a campus errand, maybe books. I didn't ask. She didn't offer. We hadn't spoken much since the meeting. The silence wasn't tense. It was practiced, familiar. The call came from a university number I didn't recognize. No voicemail, just a missed ring and an empty kitchen. They called again 20 minutes later. This time I answered. Mr. Shaw? The voice on the other end was polite, rehearsed secretary or assistant by the tone. We're calling to confirm your role as the financial guarantor on Logan Mercer's student account. There seems to be some confusion. Your name appears on our documentation, but we were informed you may no longer be involved? I didn't answer right away. That phrase, no longer be involved, echoed louder than it should have. It wasn't theirs. Came from somewhere closer. Came from her. I stood up, walked into my office, closed the door behind me, and sat down in the same chair I'd occupied the night before. My laptop still open. The documents still there. The financial portals still logged in. I'm listed as the guarantor, yes? I said slowly. Would you be able to confirm that status remains current? We require formal documentation if there's been a change. A change. No anger in me. No heat. Just clarity. Cold and calm. Like standing in a quiet room after a storm. I'll take care of the paperwork today, I said. You'll receive everything within the hour. The woman thanked me and hung up. She had no idea what had just happened. That a line had been drawn. That something had finally snapped. Clean, permanent, irreversible. I sat still for a long time. Then I opened the portal. The screen glowed with numbers, balances, due dates, linked accounts. All of it connected to me. My name on every document. My money in every line item. Tuition, housing, meal plans, technology fees, the summer program, the internship grant. I had built it like a system, efficient, quiet, reliable. I clicked the first form. Withdraw guarantor. Reason: support withdrawn. No one prompted me to write more. The form didn't ask why. It only wanted a signature and a date. I gave it both. Then I moved to housing. Same process. Logan's apartment, leased under a joint arrangement. I had co-signed to secure it. Another document. Another click. Another signature. Then came the extras, his supplemental grant application, which had only been approved because I agreed to cover the overage not included in merit funding. I rescinded that offer. Another form. Another signature. It wasn't a tantrum. It wasn't revenge. It was accounting. I didn't pause between clicks. I didn't waver. I knew what I was doing. I knew exactly how many dollars I had poured into that boy's life. I knew the hours behind them, the fatigue, the missed vacations, the extra projects I'd taken on just to ensure he never felt what I had felt growing up. And I knew now that none of it had been seen. Not really. He didn't call me Dad. That was fine. He didn't thank me. That was expected. But in that room, when he had the chance to show even the smallest gesture of recognition, he erased me. And worse, so did she. So I erased my sponsorship. Not loudly, not with a speech, just with signatures. A few quiet keystrokes. A final click. Submit. When I closed the laptop, I felt no triumph. Only stillness. The kind of stillness that comes after a long walk away from a fire that was never yours to put out. Emily didn't notice. Not at first. That day passed like most days did. She came home tired, asked what I wanted for dinner. I said I wasn't hungry. She didn't press. Logan stayed out late. He always did. I don't think he spoke to me once that night. And I didn't speak to him. What was there to say? I had accepted my place in his world. Or rather, my lack of place. The next morning, an email arrived. Acknowledgement of guarantor withdrawal. Action required. I archived it. I had already acted. Later, there was another. Student financial services. Tuition incomplete. Then one from housing. Then the internship program. Each one confirmed the same thing. Without my involvement, the foundation had cracks. Cracks only I had been patching. Quietly, relentlessly. I didn't respond. Emily was in the living room when the first call came in, this time to her. Her face shifted. The color drained slightly as she listened. They said something's missing, she murmured. Phone still pressed to her cheek. Something about funding being incomplete? Did you change something? I looked up from my coffee. No, I said. I didn't lie. I didn't explain. She looked at me for a long time, searching my face like it held a code she no longer understood. Then she turned away and said, "We'll figure it out." Into the phone. She was wrong. There was nothing left to figure out. Only consequences to arrive. Logan didn't ask. Not at first. Maybe he thought it was a glitch. A delay. He was used to comfort. Used to backup plans. But when he received the letter, official, sealed, stamped from the registrar, he changed. He didn't speak when he came home that day. He walked past me, went straight to his room. For an hour, the house was silent. Then came the footsteps. Then came the voice. "Emily," he called. Not Mom. Just her name tight with fear. She went to him. I stayed seated. Muffled voices. Questions. Then silence. She came out 15 minutes later. "He needs you to fix this," she said, her voice brittle. I looked at her carefully. "Does he?" "Yes," she snapped. "They're saying his enrollment is at risk. That housing may not be secure. That his internship funding is frozen. They don't have another guarantor on file." I nodded once. "He can add another," I said. "If someone else is willing." Her mouth opened, then closed. The silence that followed was thick. "What are you doing?" she asked. "You can't just walk away like this." My voice was calm. "I'm not walking away. I was never allowed to stand here in the first place." She blinked, as if she didn't understand. I sat in that room, I said, while he dismissed me, while you let him. I wasn't a parent then. I was a sponsor. That's what you both agreed I was. So I'm acting accordingly. She stepped closer. This is different. This is real. You can't just pull your support and expect it not to affect him. I held her gaze. No, I expect it to affect him. That's the point. The silence returned. Heavier now. Thicker. Is this about punishment? She whispered. No, I said. It's about math. I walked past her. Into my office. Closed the door. She didn't follow. The next morning, Logan left early. Probably to speak with the financial office himself. He didn't say goodbye. Emily stayed home from work. She kept looking at me like I was a stranger wearing her husband's face. Maybe I was. Maybe this version of me, this silent, exacting man, had always been there, buried beneath the layers of patience and sacrifice. Or maybe I had just stopped lying to myself. The call had come. The decision had been made. Not in anger, not in haste, but with absolute clarity. If I was only a sponsor, then I would act like one. And when the funding dried up, so would the illusion. Emily called the next morning. Not text. Not a message left hanging. A call, sharp, deliberate, already charged before I even answered. Her voice was tight, controlled. The kind of control people use when they're standing on something unstable and trying not to show it. What did you do? She asked. I didn't ask what she meant. We both knew. I handled what needed handling, I said. She exhaled hard, like I'd slapped her. The university called. They said Logan doesn't have a confirmed guarantor anymore. They said his housing is under review. His grant. His internship placement. All of it. Silence on my end. Not avoidance. Just refusal. You had no right to do this without telling me, she continued. This isn't about you. This is about his future. I stared at the wall in my office, the same wall I'd stared at the night before, and finally spoke. You decided this wasn't about me when you told the dean I wasn't involved. That was different, she snapped. No, I said. It wasn't. Her tone shifted then, anger giving way to accusation. This is control. You're punishing him through money because your ego was bruised. That one landed heavier, because it was clean, because it was simple, because it let her ignore everything that came before. I didn't punish anyone, I said. I stepped back, from a role you both made very clear I didn't have. She went quiet. I could hear her breathing. Then, softer, almost pleading. He's spiraling. He doesn't understand what's happening. He assumed you'd always be there. I closed my eyes. That's the problem, I said. She didn't answer. Not right away. Then came the words I'd been expecting. The ones that always arrive when consequences finally show up. You're being cruel. I let that sit between us. The next call didn't come from her. It came from the university again. This time not an assistant. This time the dean himself. His voice was professional, measured, but there was an edge beneath it now. Pressure. We're trying to clarify responsibility, he said. Logan's enrollment depends on it. Without a confirmed guarantor, we can't proceed as planned. Understood, I said. So who will be assuming financial responsibility going forward? The question hung in the air. Clean. Direct. No room for emotion. I didn't answer. Mr. Shaw, he prompted. I won't be, I said. Another pause. Longer this time. Is there another party we should contact? I thought of Emily's silence in that office. Logan's smirk. The word sponsor. I wouldn't know, I said. You'll have to ask his parents. The call ended politely, but the damage was already done. Within 48 hours, the emails started coming fast. Housing notified him of provisional termination. His internship coordinator withdrew confirmation, citing uncertain enrollment status. Financial aid suspended pending verification. No threats, no lectures, just facts. Logan came home that evening without speaking. He dropped his backpack by the door and stood in the hallway like he'd forgotten what came next. Emily followed him in, eyes red, jaw set. She didn't look at me. They talked in the bedroom. Voices low, then raised, then quiet again. I didn't listen. I didn't need to. Later, she came out alone. "He wants to talk to you," she said. I didn't move. "He's scared," she added. "This is bigger than pride now." I met her eyes. "It was always bigger than pride. You just didn't notice because I kept paying." She shook her head. "You're destroying him." "No," I said. "Reality is, Logan never came out. Not that night. Not the next day. When he did pass me in the hallway, he wouldn't meet my eyes. The confidence was gone. The entitlement too. Replaced by something smaller. Something brittle. 3 days later, the official notice arrived. Temporary suspension pending financial resolution. Emily read it at the kitchen counter. Her hands shook. "This didn't have to happen," she whispered. I stood behind her. "It already had." She turned on me then. Fully. No restraint left. "Are you satisfied?" she demanded. "Is this what you wanted? To watch him lose everything?" I answered without raising my voice. I wanted a line. I wanted acknowledgement. I wanted not to be erased. "And this was your answer?" she said. "No," I said. "This was yours. You just didn't expect me to accept it." She covered her face. I watched her break under the weight she'd ignored for years. No one asked who would pay now, because no one had an answer. Logan's biological father didn't call. Not once. And that silence said everything. The house changed after that. Quieter. Heavier. Like something dead behind the walls. Logan stopped laughing. Emily stopped defending. They moved around me carefully now, like I might vanish if spoken to too directly. I wasn't angry. I wasn't vindicated. I was done. One evening, as I packed a bag, Emily stood in the doorway and asked the question no one had asked yet. "Was it worth it?" I zipped the bag closed and looked at her. "I don't know," I said. "Was it worth pretending I mattered when I didn't?" She had no answer. Neither did Logan. And that was the truth none of them were prepared to face. I didn't leave that night. I could have. The bag was packed. The silence in the house had turned from cold to heavy, like wet concrete. Even the walls seemed to breathe quieter, as if waiting for the last step to fall. But I waited, not out of doubt, just timing. I wanted to leave clean. No slammed doors. No angry declarations. Just absence. That was the only truth they ever respected. I slept on the couch, though no one asked me to. Emily stayed in the bedroom. Logan's door stayed shut. I laid there in the dark, beneath a blanket I'd folded too many times for too many ungrateful hands, and listened to the muffled sounds of a house that once pretended to be a home. There was no fight to have, no closure to give. You don't reconcile with people who watched you drown and argued about the water temperature. The next morning I woke early. Out of habit. I'd always been the one to move first. The one who got the coffee brewing, the mail sorted, the lights turned on in the darker corners of the house. But I didn't touch anything. I didn't boil water. I didn't check the thermostat. I sat at the table and stared at the window, where the early light filtered in soft and directionless, like the rest of this family. At 7:23 a.m., Emily stepped into the kitchen. Her hair was unbrushed, her eyes puffy from sleep or tears. She didn't look at me when she poured her coffee, just stood there with both hands around the mug, like it might offer her something I no longer would. Finally, she said, "You're really going through with this?" I didn't answer. Not yet. I let the question settle between us, where all the others had died. "I never meant for it to go this far," she added. That got a reaction. I turned to her slowly, not angry, not bitter, just tired. "That's the problem," I said. "You never meant anything. You just watched." She blinked. Once. Then looked down into her coffee. "He's your son," she whispered. "No," I said. "He's Todd's." You reminded me of that the moment it was convenient. Silence again. She didn't argue. Logan came in a few minutes later, slow and hunched. He looked smaller somehow, like the air had been let out of him. No earbuds. No bravado. Just the slump of someone learning what it means to lose without understanding why. He didn't speak to me, didn't even look. He grabbed a bowl, poured cereal, and sat at the far end of the table like a stranger in a bus terminal. I watched him eat, watched the milk pool around the flakes, watched his spoon shake just slightly. When he stood to leave, I finally spoke. "Logan." He paused, back still to me. "You should call your father." His shoulder tensed. Just once. Then he walked out without a word. That was the last thing I said to him. By noon I was gone. Not out of spite. Out of necessity. I rented a place in a different city. 2 hours away. A one-bedroom apartment with beige carpets and no family photos. No echo of a teenage boy slamming doors. No sound of a wife defending silence over truth. It wasn't a fresh start. Just a quieter ending. I didn't leave a note. I didn't leave a forwarding address. They had my number. They had everything they'd ever needed from me. I just stopped answering. The first week passed without contact. Then Emily texted, "He's out of school. He's back home. Can we talk?" I didn't respond. A few days later, "He wants to fix things. I think he understands now." But she was wrong. Understanding isn't the same as change. Regret is not repair. It's just the shape grief takes when the consequences arrive. Then Logan texted, "I messed up. I know that. Please, just, can we talk?" I sat with that one. Read it twice. 3 times. Then I deleted it. Some people only find their voice when they've lost the comfort that silenced yours. That doesn't make them worthy of it. The rent in my new apartment came out automatically. So did the utilities. I kept a small stack of books by the window and a chair that didn't creak when I leaned back. For the first time in years, I didn't have a calendar full of other people's needs. And I didn't feel guilt, because I hadn't burned anything down. I had just stopped rebuilding what they'd demolished. People talk about fatherhood like it's a crown, something you earn through wisdom and care. But that's not true. Fatherhood, for men like me, is often a leash. A deal made in silence. Give endlessly, and maybe, if you're lucky, they'll call you something better than stranger. But even when they don't, the giving doesn't stop. Unless you stop it. And I did. The fallout wasn't explosive. It was slow. Emily stopped messaging after the 3rd week. Logan didn't call again. I didn't expect them to. When you've treated someone as disposable long enough, you don't know how to ask them to come back. I kept thinking about that question the dean asked. Who is assuming financial responsibility now? There was never an answer. Not then. Not now. Because no one had prepared for a future without me. They never thought I'd walk. They thought I was permanent. They were wrong. Months passed. The seasons turned. And every so often I'd think of that moment. Logan in the university office, slouched like royalty, Emily's hand slicing the air to silence me, the word sponsor echoing through marble halls. That was the moment I became a ghost in my own story. But here's what ghosts can do. They vanish. And when they do, the house gets colder. The floors creak louder. The foundation begins to shift under the weight of everything they held up. I wasn't a father. I wasn't even a man to them. I was a system. And when systems shut down, people start noticing everything they forgot to appreciate. That's what I left behind. Not pain. Not wrath. Just vacancy. And vacancy, unlike anger, doesn't fade. It stays. It echoes. It reminds. I imagine Logan, now, trying to reassemble the world he thought would always cushion him. Maybe he's picked up a job. Maybe he's arguing with Todd over payments that never come. Maybe Emily's at the kitchen table, staring at another letter she doesn't know how to answer. But none of that reaches me, because I'm not theirs anymore. I'm mine. And if you're reading this, if you're wondering whether I regret it, ask yourself one question. How long would you pay for a house that called you a stranger?